Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. I'm Pat.
And I'm Jessie. So glad you could join us today.
You know, there are these emotions that feel just, well, so incredibly heavy, right? So personal.
Mm-hmm.
And often our first instinct is just to kind of bury them deep down.
Yeah.
But what if actually understanding one of those feelings, specifically something called toxic shame, what if that's actually a key?
Mm-hmm.
A key to unlocking so much more about ourselves.
That's a perfect way to frame it. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the material you sent over, which includes everything from really powerful personal stories of recovery,
Right.
to some profound insights from therapists, researchers, people like Brené Brown.
Okay.
And our mission really is to unpack exactly why and when toxic shame tends to develop, and also what crucial, although often quite misleading, function it might serve. Almost like a defense mechanism.
Like defense mechanism.
Yeah. We really want to help you, our listener, recognize this powerful emotion, understand its roots, maybe see how it might be secretly, shaping parts of your life without you even realizing it.
Okay, so let's unpack this then,
Yeah.
and maybe start by getting really clear on what we're even talking about. Because, we all feel ashamed sometimes, don't we?
Oh, definitely.
Like, say you accidentally spill your coffee, in a busy cafe. That quick feeling, that flush of embarrassment.
Yeah. Pang.
You apologize, clean it up, move on.
Mhm.
Is that the shame we're talking about today? Or is there a really crucial difference here?
That's a fantastic question, and it's so vital to clarify. What you just described, that quick pang, that embarrassment when you realize you made a mistake, that's what we generally call healthy shame.
Healthy shame. Okay.
Yeah, it's actually an essential human emotion. It's kind of like an internal boundary, maybe a yellow light warning that lets us know our limits.
Right.
It assures us we're human, that we make mistakes. And it can actually be quite nourishing in a way. It keeps us grounded.
Okay, so if that's the healthy kind, the helpful kind, what makes shame toxic? Where does it cross that line?
Well, the sources we looked at are very clear on this. Toxic shame is fundamentally different. It's not about what you've done. It's about who you believe you are.
Ah, okay. Big difference.
Huge. It shifts from I made a mistake to I am a mistake. It becomes this chronic, pervasive feeling of worthlessness, even self-hatred.
Wow.
It's that really intensely painful, deep belief that, quote, we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. It's dehumanizing. It's excruciatingly painful, really isolates you.
That distinction, I am a mistake versus I made a mistake, that really lands. It sounds incredibly heavy. So when do these kinds of deep-seated feelings, this toxic shame, when does it typically take root?
The research, the sources indicate that toxic shame usually develops in childhood or early adolescence. So during those really formative years when our opinions and feelings about ourselves are still solidifying.
Makes sense.
And it's very often a trauma response. When traumatic things happen, things like child abuse, neglect, or really any kind of attack that makes you question your fundamental worth, you can start to internalize the worthlessness that maybe others are projecting onto you.
So you absorb it.
Exactly. Repeated emotional hits, physical attacks, even just chronic emotional unavailability. It can teach a child to absorb and accept this idea that they should be ashamed of themselves, even if they haven't actually done anything wrong. It wounds the developing self really deeply.
So it sounds like it's not just about the events themselves, but how those experiences get sort of woven into our developing sense of who we are. It becomes part of our identity.
Absolutely. One source, drawing from John Bradshaw's work, highlighted 3 key family dynamics where this toxic shame often seems to develop.
Okay, what are those?
Well, first, growing up with a shame-addicted parent, often mentioned as a mother, but it could be any primary caregiver who themselves carries a lot of toxic shame and models it.
How does that look?
It can be subtle, A parent who's consumed by their own shame might just be emotionally unavailable, maybe lets a child cry without comfort, or even shames the child for having needs or emotions. And the really profound insight there was that toxic shame is multi-generational. It often didn't start with you. It's like a legacy passed down.
Wow, that's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
That it can be inherited almost. What's the second dynamic?
Second is experiencing the trauma of abandonment by a parent. And importantly, this isn't just about physical absence, although that's huge too.
Right.
A parent can be physically present but emotionally absent, just not there for the child emotionally. And the child internalizes this, right? They start wondering, what's wrong with me? I must be the reason they left or the reason they don't connect with me.
Yeah, that internal questioning.
And significantly, the sources note that pretty much all forms of child abuse are, at their core, forms of abandonment because the child is left alone without help in those vulnerable moments.
Okay, and the third dynamic.
And third, um, being repeatedly exposed to shaming experiences. Things like violence, constant criticism, different kinds of abuse. This just reinforces that belief in the child that they are flawed, defective, somehow inherently bad.
So it sounds like these roots can be very deep, often within the family, but the material also suggests that it can come from, like, broader society, too.
Precisely. Yeah, toxic shame isn't only from direct abuse. It can absolutely be infused by societal and cultural messages.
Like what?
Well, for instance, one source mentioned autistic individuals, how shame can arise from a ruthless enforcement of the status quo and a strict intolerance for behaviors seen as outside the norm.
Okay, I see.
Or just more broadly, those overt and covert messages from society telling you you're failing to live up to society's notions or standards of success or masculinity or femininity, or even conforming to certain racial or cultural ideals. And interestingly, even people who seem to have it all, the Midas touch, where everything comes easy, they can develop shame too, especially when they hit bumps in the road and suddenly aren't treated as uniquely special anymore. That can trigger deep self-doubt.
And we also heard a couple of really moving personal stories, one about regret versus shame.
Yes, exactly. That account about binge drinking really highlighted the difference. The person said, regret is the feeling that something you did was wrong. Shame is the feeling that you yourself are wrong.
Such a key distinction.
It really is. And then there was that powerful story from Catherine Hill, the fire survivor, who wasn't the one with the scars.
Right.
She found herself minimizing her own trauma, feeling never enough because she subconsciously felt her experience didn't count as much. And that led to profound feelings of shame and worthlessness, even though she'd survived something terrible.
So, okay, toxic shame develops in these really difficult, often traumatic ways. What function does it actually serve? You mentioned a defense mechanism earlier, which seems so counterintuitive if it's this painful.
It does, doesn't it? And this is where it gets really, really interesting and psychologically complex. One insight from the sources suggests that toxic shame can sometimes, paradoxically, protect people from experiencing an even deeper pain: grief.
Grief. How so?
Well, the idea is that for many, really grieving means accepting that something painful happened and it can never be changed. Coming face to face with that raw truth, what happened, what couldn't be changed, it can feel simply too much to bear.
Okay.
So the theory is that the toxic shame itself, feeling inherently flawed, might feel perhaps unconsciously less unbearable than the profound grief of what was lost or what was never received, like never getting to be the teeny tiny baby who didn't get what they needed. The shame provides a sort of explanation, however painful.
Wow. So it's like a shield against an even more devastating emotional reality. That's profound.
Cool.
And we also saw in one account that shame was used, maybe unconsciously, to avoid accountability.
Indeed, yeah. One person shared quite vulnerably, I learned how shame protected me. I subconsciously knew that I could victimize myself to avoid accountability. It's a really complex psychological adaptation. It gives you a framework, even if it's a self-destructive one, to understand things that feel incomprehensible. If you feel flawed, it sort of explains why bad things happen or why you act certain ways, maybe deflecting from facing direct responsibility or the real pain of a situation.
Okay, so if it serves this protective or avoidant function, how does it actually show up? Like in our day-to-day lives, our behaviors, what are the signs?
Right. Toxic shame tends to manifest in lots of different ways, often described as hiding places or cover-ups.
Hiding places?
Yeah, these are behaviors we adopt, often without realizing it, to manage or hide that deep internal feeling of being worthless. Think about things like codependency,
Okay.
where you constantly seek validation by fixing or pleasing others because you believe your own worth is tied up in that. Or maybe narcissism, which can look like grandiosity on the outside, but it's often masking profound insecurity underneath.
And perfectionism too, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Perfectionism is a classic. That core belief, I am a mistake, drives this relentless, exhausting need to be flawless, to constantly prove you're okay, to avoid any hint of failure.
It sounds like an endless chase for external approval to quiet that inner voice.
That's a great way to put it. Other cover-ups mentioned were things like striving for excessive power and control, bursts of rage, maybe arrogance, and definitely people-pleasing.
Right.
In fact, many therapeutic models argue that pretty much all addictions, whether it's substances or behaviors, have toxic shame way down at their root. The addiction becomes a way to escape that core belief of being flawed, unworthy. It numbs the pain.
That makes so much sense if you're desperate to escape that feeling of being fundamentally wrong.
Yeah.
What about other symptoms? How else does it show up?
The symptoms are really broad. They can touch every part of you. Emotionally, you might see constant self-criticism, really low self-esteem, maybe chronic depression or anxiety. Often there's extreme sensitivity to what others think or what you think they think. Feelings of isolation, feeling unwanted, judged, maybe resentful, or just wanting to disappear. There can be this powerful, pervasive feeling like you don't even have the right to exist.
It's heavy. And behaviorally.
Behaviorally, besides those hiding places we talked about, you might see things like chronic procrastination, that feeling of nothing I do will be good enough anyway.
Right.
Substance use as an escape, certainly, but also sometimes outwardly lashing out rage, which can be that internalized self-hatred turned outwards. One person described it as constantly trying to hide how messed up I am, or feeling like they don't belong with normal people, always curating themselves, putting on a show.
And you mentioned even physically, you can see it.
Absolutely. It's very physiological. People carrying toxic shame might, maybe unconsciously, change how they speak, avoid eye contact, hunch their shoulders, literally try to make themselves smaller, curl inward.
Wow.
The body itself can seem to become small, invisible, unnoticed. You might get physical sensations too, like feeling hot and tingly, or your mind just going blank when shame hits. It's a whole body thing.
And relationships must be impacted too.
Hugely. It creates immense difficulty with vulnerability, with real connection, because there's that deep fear of judgment and rejection. If you believe you're flawed, why would anyone want the real you?
Right.
So that can lead to unhealthy communication, maybe poor boundaries, or even ending up in situations where you're mistreated because underneath it all, there's that whisper of, this is what I deserve.
And this can lead to something called self-gaslighting. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a really important concept here. Self-gaslighting is when you internally kind of twist yourself into shapes in order to tolerate what's happening.
Okay.
Instead of facing the truth that maybe a situation isn't working or someone is mistreating you, you tell yourself things like, oh, it's not that bad, or I'm just overreacting, or it's my fault. You dismiss your own feelings and needs.
So you invalidate your own experience.
Exactly. It's an internal narrative that stops you from being authentic, from acknowledging what's really going on for you.
This all sounds incredibly difficult, maybe even paralyzing for someone living with it day to day, but there is hope, isn't there? How do people begin to heal from this?
There's absolutely profound hope, and the sources offer some really clear pathways forward. The first step, and maybe the most crucial one, is bringing shame out of the dark and into the light.
Okay.
The material really emphasizes this. Shame thrives on silence and secrecy, and the key is it cannot survive the act of speaking.
So talking about it helps.
Immensely. Sharing your story, those fears, those negative thoughts, but with trusted, safe people. That's described as one of the best ways to counter shame. It means finding your voice, speaking out, not hiding behind that everything's fine mask.
That makes sense. If shame loves secrecy, vulnerability is like its kryptonite. What else helps on this healing journey?
Well, a really critical piece is cultivating self-compassion, actively learning to speak to yourself with kindness, with understanding, treating yourself like you would treat a good friend who is suffering.
Instead of that harsh inner critic.
Yeah, exactly. Recognizing that suffering, feeling inadequate sometimes. That's part of being human. It's not some unique personal failing. Practicing self-compassion consistently actually builds more resilience and motivation than self-criticism ever could.
And for many people, getting professional support must be key.
Absolutely essential for many. Seeking help from a counselor, a psychologist, especially a trauma-informed therapist, provides that safe, non-judgmental space to unpack these deep-rooted beliefs.
Right.
And specific therapies can be really effective. Things like DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which helps manage intense emotions, or EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, often used for trauma. These approaches can genuinely help you see things differently, gain clarity.
And building a supportive community, that seems crucial too.
Definitely. Finding what the sources called non-shaming intimate social networks, whether that's support groups, really close friends where you feel safe to be yourself, maybe spiritual communities, it's vital.
Feeling less alone.
Exactly. Hearing others share similar experiences breaks down that isolation. And you can learn coping strategies together. Breathing, mindfulness, journaling, even physical exercise helps ground you.
And what about circling back to that difference between shame and guilt? Does really getting that distinction help with healing?
Oh, it's a huge step forward, a pivotal one. Like we said, regret and guilt are about actions. I did something wrong, which means you can potentially fix it, apologize, learn from it.
Right, there's room for change.
Exactly. But shame is about identity.
Hmm.
I am wrong, I am flawed. It shuts down that possibility of growth because it attacks your core self. So consciously separating those, realizing you can feel guilty for an action without feeling ashamed of your entire being, that opens up huge possibilities for growth and self-acceptance.
It almost sounds like shame, despite being so painful, might actually have an upside, a potential for transformation.
It absolutely does. And that was one of the most hopeful takeaways from the sources, I thought. One source put it beautifully: shame motivates learning and a desire to change the self. When we can actually face the pain without being consumed by it, it signals the need for and then motivates the behaviors of reconnection and reconciliation. It's potentially a powerful motivator of change for the better. It presents this opportunity to become different, to grow.
So it pushes us towards connection and change.
Yeah, and ultimately it teaches us how to love ourselves, even in the darkest of times. It's an invitation to deeper compassion and courage.
So thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, our listener tuning in today?
Well, I think the most profound takeaway is this. Your inherent value, your worthiness, exists completely independently of any shame you've ever carried. It's still there, intact, beneath whatever layers of protective beliefs or behaviors you developed along the way.
That's important to hear.
It really is. And the journey of healing from toxic shame is about deliberately, consciously practicing self-kindness, challenging those ingrained self-judgments, and actively seeking out connections where you feel truly seen, valued, and accepted for exactly who you are. It's definitely hard work, no question. But it's probably the most liberating work you can possibly do. Work that helps you shed those masks and really step into accepting and embracing your authentic self.
So maybe take a moment now and consider, what stands out to you from our deep dive today? Can you see how some of those subtle signals of toxic shame might be showing up in your own life? Perhaps as that drive for perfectionism, or maybe an urge to withdraw socially, or just that quiet nagging feeling of not quite enough. How could you, maybe starting today, begin to shine just a little bit of sunlight on those hidden parts of yourself, even just acknowledging them as a start?
We really hope this deep dive has been insightful, maybe sparked something helpful for you on your own journey.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration today. We're truly grateful you took the time to listen.
And if you found value in our conversation, please do consider subscribing, maybe liking this and sharing this deep dive with someone else you think might benefit from hearing it.
Yeah, and please leave us a comment too. We genuinely love to hear your thoughts and continue this conversation with you.
We really would.
We'll see you next time, right here on The Deep Dive. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye, everyone.